Episode 1, Unauthorized Magic. And it begins with a man and a woman having a rendezvous in the streets of New York City. The gist of the conversation they have is that he runs a school, Brakebills, and they are both aware of something coming for the students. For whatever reason, that seems to be happening sooner than expected, and the woman prays that they get something under their belts before he finds a way to them. Especially him. She gives the man a pocket watch, just in case. The man in question especially needs to get something under his belt before whatever happens, because it's Quentin Coldwaters. He's a man with a promising future. He's just about to graduate. He has an interview for a graduate program at Yale. But at the same time, as much as it seems like he's excelling, he would much rather be in Fillory, a fictional magical world that follows the Chatwin siblings. It is a somewhat Narnia-like series, where a bunch of young English children find passages into a magical world to escape the harsh realities of their life. The weekend before his interview for Yale, Quentin checks himself into a mental health clinic. He has been suffering with depression, and I think the stress of life just has been taking it out on him. During his time there, he realizes that maybe it is time to grow up and sell the proverbial comic books. Quentin goes to his Yale interview with the support of his childhood best friend, Julia. Upon arriving at the location of the interview, they find the interviewer is dead and paramedics soon show up. One of the paramedics happens to be the woman from earlier, the one that gave the pocket watch to the man that runs Brakebills. She hands Quentin a packet. "Hey, I think the interviewer meant for you to have this." When Quentin opens up this packet, he finds Fillory and Further, Book 6, a book that doesn't exist, or at least it's not supposed to have existed. Its existence has been debated, as some parties believing that there is a sixth book and others going, no, there was only the original 5. Seeing this book completely takes Quentin out of his I have to grow up mindset. It's opened a can of worms that, hey, if there was a 6th Fillory book, then what else is going on in the world? Maybe I don't have to give up on the hopes and dreams and all the other things that I find important that aren't, necessarily going to Yale to a finance degree program. Julia has a bit of an argument with him. She is concerned because she knows that Quentin was just at the mental hospital, even though he claims to have gone to visit his dad. And she's like, hey, I love you, but I can't watch you descend into this magical depression, this fictional depression of getting caught up in places that don't even exist and not even being able to exist in reality and not to make improvements for your future. Quentin gets upset at this. He's like, hey, you're the one that got me into Fillory. Why aren't you excited? They end up sort of splitting off, where Quentin just keeps walking along to who knows where, and Julia heads over to her boyfriend's apartment. While Quentin is looking through the papers, a sudden gust of wind blows along and blows away one of the sheets of papers, and it sends him chasing after it. As Julia goes to her boyfriend's apartment and gets in the elevator, she hits the button to go up, and instead of going up, it starts going down. As he chases further and further after it, he finds himself into a dark alleyway, which suddenly turns bright, and all of a sudden, he's on a sunny campus and no longer in the middle of a New York alleyway. The elevator door opens up and Julia finds herself in a completely different building. As both Julia and Quentin start walking forward, we sort of get a pan out, and we can see both of them are now at Brakebills.
Quentin Coldwater? Uh-huh. I'm Elliot. You're late. Follow me.
Now at Brakebills, the two of them are instructed by the dean, the man from earlier. They are here to test their magical aptitude along with other prospective students. Everybody gets handed out exam booklets, and when they look inside of them, the words start shifting magically. At the end of the exam, Quentin and Julia reunite quickly before they get interrupted saying, shh, telling them to be quiet, and they sort of get moved along to the next part of the assessment. Julia is brought into a separate room and is told that she failed the exam. This means her memory of Brakebills is going to be wiped and she's going to be sent back to her regular life. Julia is like, whoa, I can't go to Yale if I know this place exists. And in her desperation, she ends up making a mark on her arm in the hopes that after her memory gets wiped, the mark will kick her memory and help her remember Brakebills. Quentin gets brought to a different room where the dean and 4 other examiners are, and Dean tells him, do magic. Quentin's not really sure what he's supposed to do, so at first he just picks up a deck of cards and sort of starts to do his regular, magic tricks. The dean is not happy about that, and he tells him to stop dicking around and do some real goddamn magic. Quentin's like, I don't know, and in his flustering, the cards explode into the air and start circling the room before they come to a stop on a table in a massive house of cards. Or should I say a castle of cards. And he goes, oh my gosh, I did magic. And then he faints. Quentin wakes up and he's in a dream sequence. He's walking along a path towards a tree that has a clock in it. Just as he's about to touch the clock, Jane Chatwin appears and tells him, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Time magic is tricky, and it won't stop the beast. You need to get off the garden path if you want to survive. Awake for real now, Quentin gets the lowdown of break bills. It's a 3-year graduate program that exists to reveal your innate ability and to hone it to the highest degree. The Yale interviewer from earlier was sent by Break Bills, but unfortunately passed away before he was able to invite him because of a diabetic incident where apparently he ate some Oreos and didn't properly dose himself, and it led to his death. Honestly, it's a really strange explanation, but nothing ever happens. It's never brought up again. I guess you sort of just have to take it at face value that, hey, we're in this magical TV show and this one guy just happened to die because of his diabetes. Goes to tell you that magic isn't everything. Quentin is sent to put down his belongings in his room, briefly meeting his roommate Penny, but then Elliot and Margot, 2 second years, come along to give him an unofficial tour of the campus. They tell us students are divided into different emphases. There's physical, illusionist, nature, healer, knowledge, and psychics. Failure isn't an option here. To fail means to get your memory wiped. Margot tells him to stick on the garden path to get through break bills. During the tour, Quentin notices 2 students who look very morose, and Elliot says they are 2 of half of the remaining 3rd years who went missing, and nobody knows what happened to the other 16. In the first class, the professor calls Alice to the front of the room to give a demonstration of her magic. She turns a glass bead into a tiny dancing chorus. Penny, Quentin's roommate, flirts with another student, Katie, which leads to them hooking up. After class, Quentin hangs out with Margot and Elliot. Margot recognizes Alice as Alice Quinn. She comes from a magical family. Quentin tries to go over to talk to Alice to sort of apologize for his insecurities, and she gets really annoyed with him, saying, hey, my family is not an advantage at all. Julia, post-break bills rejection, is not doing so well. Because she made the mark on her arm, she remembers break bills, but she's unable to find any information about it online. And so she sort of starts going into a bit of a depression, being like, I know there's this cool magical school that exists, and I got rejected from it. I don't want to go to Yale. Just like she said earlier, like, how could I go to Yale when I know this place exists? When I know magic exists, who cares about Yale? So in the hopes of cheering her up, her boyfriend throws her a party and invites Quentin, but Elliot and Margot overhear the word party and they invite themselves. At the party, Julia begs Quentin to help let her into the school, but Quentin is like, hey, I think the school weeded you out for a reason and you should accept that. It sort of feels really similar to how earlier she told him to give up the magical stuff and, go to Yale. Now he's telling her to give up the magical stuff and to go to Yale. Afterwards, a man approaches Julia at the bar. He corners her in a bathroom and he magically restrains her, in honestly a very creepy way, and he tells her that she has to get herself out. Luckily, she does free herself with her own magic, and he says, hey, we've been watching you. Who's we? We don't know, but he takes her to a warehouse where the other magical rejects, or should I say the hedges, are. Quentin, back at break bills, enters into another dream sequence where Jane tells him he needs to stop clinging to break bills and he needs to start seeking out real answers. She leads him up to Rupert Chatwin's grave and she presses his hand against a sigil which burns into his hand. When he wakes up, the symbol is still on his hand, and he realizes, wait a minute, I've seen that before. This is in Alice's notes. So then he goes to Alice. And this is when we find out the entire reason why Alice came to Breakbills. 5 years ago, her brother Charlie attended, and he ended up dying. Nobody told her what happened, and she's here to figure out what happened. He was never given a reason for his death. She has a summoning spell that might be able to contact him, but she needs 4 people. Luckily for her, with Quentin showing up, she has 2. And then, who comes along? Penny and Katie. Penny, because he heard a voice drawing him towards her, and Katie, because her and Penny were hooking up. So the 4 of them at midnight perform the spell, but nothing happens. As they go to leave the room, a mirror fogs up and a smiley face is drawn on it. The next day, class goes on as normal. The professor is droning on about the importance of metal and magic. Just as the clocks are about to strike noon, the hands stop moving. The dean looks down at his watch, notices this, and rushes off in a dead sprint towards the classroom. Because just as the clock strikes noon, everyone in the room is paralyzed, and a man with a moth-covered face steps through the mirror and immediately kills the professor. The dean bursts through the door, and he tries to stop him, but is unsuccessful and ends up getting injured. And then the moth-covered man walks up to Quentin, calling him by name, and reaches out to touch his face, just as the scene fades to black, and we're at the end of episode 1.